Start the recording. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes before the official time, and I like to talk about the news. This is very interesting. I read this today. This guy is a teenager in Dublin, California, near here, and he is apparently a political activist of some kind. He's very involved in democratic politics, but he decided he hates CNN for some reason. He has like a whole hashtag of boycott CNN, and so in order to pick on CNN, he hacks them in an interesting way. He found out that they post results and they delay them for like 20 minutes, but they use predictable URLs. So he was able to predict the URL of like the last 3 political items, polls or something, and he was able to post the results 20 minutes before they were up because he would just guess where they were going to be and see where the page was before it was officially there. And he thinks they're complete idiots for doing that. And he said that anyway, I contacted him after I saw this, and he agreed to come give a talk here, and I would like him to do that because this is stuff very close to my heart on political stuff and white hatting. And he made an interesting statement. He said, "I'm not breaking the law. I'm just guessing a URL and finding it." And I said, "Yeah, I really want to talk to this guy because I used to say the same thing." And then I talked to my lawyer, and he said, "You got to read to see if you are breaking the law." And I said, "Well, that's rude." But as a matter of fact, guessing a URL and finding a page that they don't want you to find, in fact, is a CFA violation. And I'd like to talk to him about it because unfortunately, when you're a beginner, you apply common sense to the law. This is a typical Rube mistake. Common sense has nothing to do with it. The law is whatever's written down. And if you read what's written, if you go to a website by any means at all, and you see something they did not want you to see, you've now broken the law. It is nothing to do with overcoming a barrier or a password or anything. Anyway, of course, for something like what he's doing, you probably could not really be prosecuted as long as you got a lawyer and cooperated with your lawyer. But technically, you could be accused of breaking the law, and there is some truth in that. So anyway, that's why I want to talk to him, because I made the same mistake for years. I did a lot of white hatting. And the cybersecurity law is not that obvious. But anyway, he's a very interesting guy, and he has agreed to come give a talk, so you'll have a chance to hear more from him. So this, I think, is very important. I've been waiting for 30 years for tech unions, and it finally seems to be happening. Amazon and Google are severely punishing people who begin starting unions. I've been expecting this all along. They just expect server administrators and security people to just work all the weekends and nights for no extra pay and travel, and they're on call like doctors. And they're just in the habit of expecting everybody to work ridiculous numbers of hours and a lot of overtime just to prove how tough they are. And as the field grows up and you start having normal people and women with children and people who like to have other concerns in life in the field, instead of just a bunch of men that are trying to prove they're the toughest cowboy on the block, then you begin to have reasonable labor concerns. And anyway, so I'd be glad to see unions and they have plans here how to organize. The main thing is, of course, don't let your boss know anything. Don't use the company email or the company servers or anything. But it's a big issue, and I think it's really coming. Several of the big companies have begun to get caught suppressing unions. Google paid for one of the anti-union companies to come in and bust unions. I used to be married to an undercover detective, and if you are a beginning undercover detective and you can't get a job, the worst job in the world is to become a union infiltrator. It's illegal, but you join a company, you join the union, and you rat them out to the management, and you have to leave town and change your name every 6 months. It's illegal. They will hunt you down and kill you. But it's a way to get a job if you're an undercover detective and there's something wrong with you, so you can't get anything even remotely legitimate, like chasing down people that are cheating on their wife. This is like the bottom of the barrel if you're desperate for a job as an undercover detective. It happens. Industrial espionage of that sort. Anyway, so the anti-vaxxers have won in New Jersey, California, and several other states have laws that there's no longer a religious exemption for having your kids vaccinated, but they tried to pass it in New Jersey and it fell apart, so they're celebrating. There's like, I think now 3% of people in New Jersey actively don't want to vaccinate their kids. This is, ever since the 2016 election, I've been watching this. It is very interesting. You know, I used to believe that if people got educated, they would stop being superstitious idiots, and that is not what happens at all. It just squeezes the stupid over to another side. I moved to California where people are very highly educated. They no longer believe the old religions, so now they believe that you have to worship an alien on a comet and kill yourself to reincarnate on the comet and stuff. They just have the same amount of stupid squeezed over to a different place over here. And a lot of my friends won't get flu shots because they're sure it's an evil thing and makes you sick. It's very interesting. But anyway, so this is the current big issue. Now, I think I heard 6,000 kids died in another country from measles this year. It's very interesting, and this is very important to the world of cybersecurity, is social engineering. How do you stop people from doing stupid things? This is really hard. It's not technical, but it's really important, and it's not easy. Let's have a chat message coming in. are hilarious. Oh, good. Okay, good, good. Well, I'm sure somebody, if I was more popular, I'd get more hate mail. But anyway, yeah. So anyway.
That's how they got
yeah.
Bin Laden's DNA, right? The vaccine program.
Well, I didn't know that, but I do know that they were trying to vaccinate, I think in Pakistan, and the tribal people refused to let them in. They say those guys are CIA agents and they're here to kill us. And then it turned out they were in fact sneaking CIA agents in among the nurses to vaccinate people. And they had to say, you know, in retrospect, we probably shouldn't have done that. But the CIA is famous for doing things that are going to have blowback later and not caring. Like, let's give bin Laden a bunch of bombs and guns and training because he happens to be on our side at the moment. That won't make trouble later. It'll be fine. And they keep on doing things that anybody could say, wait a minute, in a couple of years, we're going to wish you hadn't done that. Anyway. So this one is pretty impressive. Well, this guy got 9 months in jail for stealing 5 pounds, which is kind of amazing. He went to the national lottery and he found some trivial hack to, he found a brute forcing tool. Something sounds like Hydra, something that just tries to log into a website. So he's able to log into a website and he stole a trivial amount of money. And the judge said, well, you broke the law, and threw the book at him. So anyway, I don't think that would happen here. Last semester, we had a guest speaker who was the head of the Cybercrime FBI division here. And I saw him at B-Sides and he came and gave a talk here. He did it remotely, but we talked about this. And he said, you know, in America, we have discretion and we don't punish people who do small things like this. You know, most cybercrime people don't get punished at all. And if they do, they get like 18 months and they often get suspended sentences. You know, they only if you do something really bad, which the case that surprised me was Silk Road, because that guy was like 1 mile from here. It's in the library, right down that way, about 1 mile down the road. They picked up Ross Ulbricht, who was running Silk Road, and he got a life sentence. And I was afraid he was one of my students, but thank God he wasn't. He was from MIT. But he ran the underground marketplace where he sold drugs and guns and murder for hire and prostitution and everything. And they gave him life sentences. So I asked this FBI guy, I said, why did you give him, how do you get life sentence for that? He said, oh, it's for the drugs. And I said, oh, I'm from California. I forgot drugs are illegal. But I cared about the murders, but it wasn't the murders. He killed 4 people. At least he thought he killed one. That's what bothered me. But they didn't even talk about that. That's nothing. 4 murders last 20 years. I mean, the thing about drugs is like it's so many years for every gram. And if you run the marketplace, he ran like 1 million grams of coke, and therefore he's in there until the sun burns out. So that's what happened to him. Anyway, here's another one. This is extremely common. And again, not very technical. This is the new way to make money. You just send someone an email and say, hey, you forgot to pay your bill. Send me $1,000. And they do it. And this keeps happening over and over and over. You just send someone a bill. And that's why there was a study that just came out a couple of weeks ago, which I found extremely enlightening, that said, if you want to find out what is the main predictor of insecure products at a company, it is the bureaucratic chaos that determines it. The main thing that makes things insecure is people don't know who the boss is. They don't know how to talk to the other team. They don't know how to work together. And that's my experience. I've been auditing iOS apps. I've audited about 700 so far. I found a bunch of vulnerabilities. And the worst ones are when I tell them, I get an answer that makes it clear nobody even knows what I'm talking about. Nobody knows who to escalate it to. And so that's the point. If you're just confused, if someone gets a mail in the purchasing department and they don't actually know what is the proper procedure for purchasing, because we don't really have a good procedure, then you're vulnerable to this stuff. You know, everybody should know what they're supposed to do, know who they're supposed to ask, not give out the money until the right person has approved it on the right form or something. But a lot of people are just disorganized, and so you can exploit that. Anyway, I'm going to go through this a lot more. This is at the heart of what I'm doing and the heart of this class. This is a test of mobile applications. And it is very true. I've been doing this for years. And mobile apps are ridiculously insecure. A customer opening up something on their iPhone or their Android phone, they can't even tell if it's a secure connection. They go to a login page. They don't know what's going on. They don't know where that data is going. And since you can't see it, you should be as cynical as possible. I mean, if you have no way to test it, then they're probably just doing stupid things with it, and they totally are. And I'm amazed. Apple announced in 2017 they were not going to allow people to use plain text transmissions anymore from iOS apps. And I found 4 or 5 in the last 2 weeks that are using plain text authentication. It's not even supposed to be possible anymore, but they're totally doing it. And anyway, so these tested mobile apps and found, of course, that an enormous number of them are extremely vulnerable. So we'll do a lot of that in this class. Our main focus here is going to be auditing mobile apps to find their insecurity, and it is ridiculous. Mobile apps are like we took a time machine back to 1993 when people didn't know anything and they were just using Telnet and Windows NT and just ridiculously vulnerable products, and anybody who knew just a little hacking could just blast right in. Mobile apps are the bottom of the barrel, it is extremely obvious that most companies do not do any security audit of their apps at all. They just pay someone until it looks good, and then they call the job done. So, but that I think is beginning to change. Anyway, so I guess that's enough. We're down to the official class time. So this is 128, Hacking Mobile Devices. This is the book, A Mobile Application Hacker's Handbook. This is a very good book. And I'm going to start with Android. Until this semester, for the last several years, I've only done Android, not iOS in here because I couldn't get into the iOS. But thanks to Axiom X and the Checkmate vulnerability that came out 3 months ago, we can now jailbreak iPhones again. And we can get totally in and see what's going on in there. And what I've been telling people for years, you're safer with iPhones than you are with Android. And now that I can finally get in, I see that is not really true. Now, it was true for a while because you couldn't get in to see. That's why I was stopping and reporting local storage vulnerabilities, because you can't get it in local storage anyway. But now you can. And it is just as much of a disaster as Android. But we will start with Android. And then when we get to iPhones, it's really pretty much the same. The way phones work is very much similar. All right. So we're going to go through the way smartphones work, the way the operating system works, the way data is handled, and the way apps are designed. Most of our time is going to be spent on understanding how apps work, how they throw data around from one process to another, and out the network card and in the storage, and what they should do and what they're actually doing. And there's quite a gulf between the two. That's the handbook. So this class has quizzes and projects you turn in. Attendance does not matter. You do not have to attend physically. You can connect over Zoom. Several people are doing it right now. And you can also just watch the video later. If you don't even want to watch it at this time, if you're like on the other side of the planet or something, or you work at this time, that's perfectly fine. You can just watch the video, or you can just ignore it completely and read the book, because your points come only from quizzes and projects you turn in. So if you learn this stuff anywhere, you don't even need to pay attention to these lectures. And typically in my classes, many students don't bother physically showing up after the first day. You're certainly welcome. There are reasons to show up physically, by the way. The reason to show up physically is because you want to get help. And the help is more precise if you're nearby, or you want to meet the other students and get involved in advanced things like projects or the cyber competition teams or something, that it's good to get to know people and be here physically. But if your schedule doesn't permit, or your traveling plans don't permit, it's perfectly fine to just use these remote options. The videos will just be right on this page. This schedule will just have videos appearing here on YouTube, and my videos from previous semesters are all up on YouTube too. So anyway, so you have to go to this link to sign up for Canvas. There is a City College Canvas, but I don't use it because I let everybody in the world take this class for free. They only get City College credit if they go through the bureaucracy here, which you might have noticed is pretty messed up. But if they don't do that, I don't care. Any people take this class and learn the material and get what I regard as a grade, but they don't get official credit. So anybody in the world can just sign up with this link. And it is not the City College system because, of course, they would restrict that to only official City College students. And I used to use the advanced features there, like the API that they block, although I'm not using it anymore because it wasn't worth it. I want to do more cyber competitions. Kendall has made a class. Yes, Saturday. That's right. Saturday's the big thing. If you want to do the cyber competitions, you should take 140 on Saturday. Liz is the coach of the team and is doing very well. And you really have to show up for that. There's no remote option for that. I was just talking to Caitlin at the last class about this. You really have to be there to practice being on the team. I highly recommend it for the more advanced students. You will learn a lot more, and you'll meet a lot of important people and get connected to a lot of good job opportunities by being on the competition team. Anyway, so the live link is here. It's always the same. That's where the live versions of my classes are, and you can email stuff here. Don't send email to my personal account if it's about class things that would affect your grade, because my personal account gets flooded with junk and I often miss mails. So this goes to my grader, who is far more diligent and reliable than me and makes sure everything gets proper attention. I'm often missing things in my personal email. Anyway, you can send things there, but if you send them here, they will definitely hit someone who will actually notice it. I might well not notice it. Anyway, so there's a schedule here, which may be subject to some adjustment because I have guest speakers when I can have them, and often something goes wrong with one of the projects because I use real live apps in this class, which is, by the way, kind of insane. I do a lot of things that are pretty insane. When I first taught this class, I used a special app written to have security flaws. And it was really hard to install and really out of date and really didn't work very well. And then I started auditing real apps until I found a whole bunch of real apps that have horrible problems where I notify them and they didn't fix it. So now they're homework. So we're using real apps from real commercial businesses, and you're analyzing them to find their flaws. And it is remotely possible they'll actually patch it someday, although most of these people are so totally asleep at the switch, but other things might happen. So sometimes the projects are broken. So if that happens, I might be reshuffling the deadlines and such. If you don't get something done on time, you can still do it late. We just knock a few points off for being late. And you can get extra credit for doing off-campus training, giving presentations, things like that. But there aren't any term papers or presentations required in this class. I do that in my management classes where there's no hands-on projects. Here, most of your time will be spent doing hands-on projects. So there is a textbook and there's quizzes on the contents of the textbook that you should do, but you can also just do hands-on projects, and you can do a lot of extra credit on these hands-on projects, enough to make up for all your bad quizzes. And by the way, you don't have to be restricted to my projects. You can make up other things. One thing you should definitely do, and I'm going to add it here, is you should do a real audit and find new vulnerabilities that nobody else has done. They are so thick on the ground. If you go through 10 apps, you will find a serious vulnerability, probably after you do 5 apps. If you just look at the apps currently on your phone, 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 of them has a ridiculous security problem. Major companies, huge banks, huge streaming services, it's ridiculous. Nobody's checking them at all. And if you just learn to do a few simple tests, you will find them. Anyway, so that's certainly worth something, and I'll add that up. I used to have that up. I haven't got it this semester, where you just write up a project where you find an app. If you do find a vulnerability, you can also notify the publisher. Now, if you do that, this is white hatting. This is considered amateurish and unprofessional. I do it all the time, but it's considered insane and dangerous. You analyze someone's app without permission, then you call them and say, dude, there's a problem with your app. The problem is they will often freak out and try to sue you or blame you or say you hacked them or something. That's a little better. It used to be a lot worse a few years ago. I've done this to hundreds of companies. And I taught this class in Texas about 6 years ago, and my students tested the Android apps there, and they tested the app for that college. And the organizers of the conference that had me there teaching the class freaked out, and they said they were going to end the class, throw me out, ban me, and never let me in again because I dared to find a security flaw in their app and I'm a horrible person. And my students all said, if you kick him out, I'm leaving too. And so they forgave me. But then I advertised that class as the class that was banned in Texas. And that was cool. I went to DEF CON to teach it. You know, you're getting somewhere when people hate you, but people freak out. This is a fundamental thing in security that takes some getting used to. When you start learning security, you find out how to detect security problems, and then you tell people and you expect them to say thank you. And that is not what happens at all. They think you're a criminal. They think you're insane and dangerous. They want to just make you shut up. You're just as welcome as someone telling their priest that this other priest has been molesting little kids. You think you're doing a good deed, but they don't see it that way. Authority figures always have the same reaction. RSA, the most famous security conference in the world, probably coming in a month or two. The RSA conference about 5 years ago had a SQL injection vulnerability on their website. And one of the companies that had paid thousands of dollars for a booth told them, dude, you got a vulnerability on your website. So the RSA conference kicked them out and banned them and canceled their booth. So they couldn't go to punish them. Even their security company. There's something about holding a position of responsibility that makes people completely stupid, where the answer to every problem is just shoot the messenger. And I've never been that important, but I know the boss, I used to work in the financial company, and the boss, every day people would come in his office and tell him about disasters. And I think you just have a hard life. You hear about problems and you just swat them down like a fly. But anyway, when you tell people about a security problem, they do not say thank you. You're lucky if they don't prosecute. So anyway, you might not want to notify the vendor. You might want to have me do that. I do have a lawyer. I have a very good lawyer. You need a lawyer in this business. If you do something and you end up having legal threats or something, talk to me. I can put you in touch with a good lawyer. He can help save you. He's saved me a bunch of times. I've gotten in plenty of trouble. All right. What's that? No, but I can put you in contact with him. Let me know. And he's very good. He worked with the EFF. He worked on several famous cybersecurity cases. He's saved me several times. If you work in this business, unless you really keep your head down and just like work on your company app on company time and don't do any outside research, you get in trouble really fast. Even if you just go to the conferences, even if you just have a blog and state an opinion about something, pretty soon somebody is screaming and yelling and blaming you of stuff. And anyway, everybody I know in this business, they've been around more than like 5 or 10 years, you need a lawyer. Because even when you're doing nothing wrong, you end up in trouble. Anyway, so, all right, let's see, is there another chat? All right, looks like there is. All right, pro bono. Oh, well, yes, he has done, in fact, a lot of pro bono work. But, we'll work it out. So if you need a lawyer, talk to me. I can put you in touch with people. I can give you amateur advice. He can give you professional advice. And we know other people. So, you know, it's just part of the cost of doing business. At first, I freaked out and I thought I was going to try to make my class 100% legal. And then I found out this is America. There's no such thing as 100% legal. Like the college gives away classes for free, and then they get sued all the time. The stairs are too steep. The bathrooms are broken. You can do the best you can and you'll just get sued. In America, it's just the case that you have to have a legal team and you have to accept a steady drumbeat of lawsuits coming in as you go through life. There's no such thing as zero legal risk. So you have to adjust, you have to do threat modeling of legal issues, just like other threats, and you have to decide your risk tolerance and your risk appetite. But there is no such thing as zero risk in the legal field or any other field. You have going to have some risk. So you do need to have lawyers. Anyway, so, all right. So what I wanted to do here, by the way, if anybody tried to add, I added everybody to the class. There's room for everybody, of course. If, now you just add in the online system and then I approve it, supposedly. It was not working yesterday, but supposedly it's working today. So there was a list of 10 people and I approved them all. So hopefully you're in. They just changed the system and it's usually broken around here. So there may be troubles, but as far as I'm concerned, everybody can get in, and let me know if anybody's having trouble getting in. All right. I have a paper printout with the rules here for grading if you care, but most people don't care about that paper, but I should just mention the rules in case I wasn't thorough enough. There's actually a grading handout for people. So this just tells you how it works. There are quizzes and there are projects you turn in, and that adds up to a number of points. So 90% is an A, 80% is a B, and 60% is a C, and so on. If people are stealing or cheating or doing something rotten, let me know. And if it's interesting, you might get extra credit. But anyway, that's, by the way, but you know, if it's actually something bad going on, then I can in principle flunk people or take points away. But if you actually just find an interesting way to defeat the controls and do what you're not supposed to be able to do without hurting anybody, that's fine. And for that, I should tell you the fun part, which is probably the most interesting part, which is my disclosure policy. You can totally hack me. Everyone should. This is what every company should have. This is something hard to explain to management. But if you want to make a secure company, you should opt out of the legal protection of US law. This is hard for them to get. But the fact is, if you run a company, there are a bunch of people out there like me who would like to just test your security just because they're kind of nuts. And they would like to tell you if they find something bad, and they're not going to hurt anybody. And there's a whole bunch of evil hackers that want to totally break in and steal your stuff and ruin your company. And they're coming whether you like it or not. But the good guys are afraid to come in if you don't tell them you won't prosecute them. So you should have a disclosure policy saying, if you test my stuff and find a vulnerability and tell me and try to avoid doing any harm, then I won't prosecute you. And this is legally binding. I can't prosecute you for hacking me as long as you stay within these rules. And it says, you know, make some effort to avoid taking down project homeworks that people need up and hurting anybody, and give me some time to fix it. And then I won't prosecute. This does not apply to ccsf.edu, by the way. Don't do that. I'm not authorized to do that. It just applies to my stuff, but you can totally hack my stuff. And if you do, you'll get extra credit and you'll end up on the Hall of Fame. Here's the people that hacked me. And there's a lot of them by now. A lot of hacks here at various different levels. This I thought was one of the more awesome ones. He just snuck, I used to log into my machine in the lab, and he snuck up behind me with a cell phone and recorded my key presses. That's pretty awesome. It's quite effective, and I really don't know much of a defense against it. Now I got thumbprint authentication, which, by the way, is not that hard to get around either. But anyway, then people did lots of things. Axiom X, the same guy that later made the checkmate exploit on iOS, he got root on my server, which I didn't even think was possible. That was supposed to be a secure server, but he found a flaw in my server and got root on it. It was good, clean fun. There, you other people, this guy. Yeah, non-sec hackers hacked me and put pro-Palestinian messages on one of my pages one time. And then people said, hey, you left those up. And I said, it's a fair hack. He found a vuln, he put them up. I mean, he didn't say kill somebody. He said freedom for Palestine. I said, yeah, okay, freedom, that's all right. Anyway, if it had been something awful, I would have took it down. But I said, it's legit. He found a vuln, he put that up on my page. It's still there. One of my old classes has freedom for Palestine from Palestinian hackers on it, what should be there. Anyway, so, all right. So let me talk about a couple of things. I just, for motivation, the first lecture I just do motivational stuff. We'll start doing the textbook next time. Usually read the book and start taking the online quizzes. But I want to just give you a little bit of overview of where we're going. So I gave this talk a couple of years ago at DEF CON. And so this, if you look at the So Android is the #1 operating system. It is that way because they flooded the market. There are thousands of Android phones of every different size and cost point and level of complexity with all kinds of weird defects and bugs. And so Android has many, many versions out there. But this leads to the problem of the diversity of Android phones. It's very hard for developers because there's all these different phones with different resolutions and everything. And so it's hard to make an app that will look good on all those phones. And it's really bad for security because most of those phones are 2 years or more out of date. Android does not have any automatic updating process that works in practice, which is ridiculous. This is how Apple lost their no malware thing. They failed to update automatically. Microsoft learned this the hard way 20 years ago. Google is just learning it now. You gotta have automatic updates. But what the problem with Google is they have updates, but they mixed feature updates with security updates. So the carriers that sold you your phone would charge you extra for things like tethering your computer to it, and then Google will give that away for free in the next version, so they block the updates. Google has been talking about developing a security update channel that is different than the feature update channel in the hopes that the carriers will allow the security updates through instead of the feature updates, but as far as I can tell, it's not working. And in fact, here's the following evidence for this. Google used to publish statistics of how many people are using which version of Android, and security people like me have been laughing at them and mocking them, abusing them for years, because the answer is like 95% of them are running something 2 years or more old. And so they took action. About a year ago, they stopped publishing the statistics. That was their improvement. And they never started publishing it again. So they became aware of this. This is like this. We have a lab. We made up using this semester. There's a hacking lab. The heaters are stuck on permanently. It's like 90 degrees in there. It's bad for the computers. So I complained, pushed over to the college until they sent someone to take the thermostat out. So we can't see the temperature anymore. That was the similar solution. But anyway, so I think it's still the case that Android is very, very out of date in most cases because the carrier wants you to buy a new phone. There is no financial motivation for them to allow you to get the updates. So it is a sort of broken system where people are using old devices. And of course, if you have not updated your stuff in a few months, then there's just a known tool any script kiddie can run to get in. That is the worst thing you can do in security, is not put on the updates. But to be fair, before I say Microsoft is the good guy, Microsoft used to be the good guy until Windows 10. But in Windows 10, they force everybody to take the updates, and the quality of their updates is so terrible, it keeps breaking everything. So even the most respected people I know have said, don't update your Windows 10 anymore. If you do, it will break everything. And I certainly found that to be true. So it's a very strange world out there. Anyway,
Microsoft says that.
Microsoft says that?
Yeah, because I got January 14th, my Windows 7 is not supported, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we recommend you don't update to Windows 10. But I got a fairly new.
They recommend you don't update.
Yeah,
because
you should buy a new machine.
Buy a new machine. Well, okay. Well, that's nice of them. Well, yeah, well, I'm sure you'll jump right on that. Anyway, so, all right. So anyway, here's another bizarre thing about Android. Now, Apple apps, to get in the Apple store, they have to be signed by Apple. You can't put anything in the store. You have to send it to Apple, and they have to approve it, and then they sign it. You can't put anything on your iPhone unless Apple signed it, which is, by the way, pretty great. Android doesn't have that. You can put your app anywhere, on your blog anywhere, and people can put it. And it uses a self-signed certificate. The only reason for the signature at all is so you can put up updates, and people who update existing apps know they're getting something from the original manufacturer. It's very strange. They are not public certificates that go through the certificate authority system and are purchased from somebody, which is awesome. So what we're going to do in this class is download apps like the Bank of America app, modify it, re-sign it, and make a distributable app that will steal passwords from the Bank of America logins. It's bloody awesome. There are ways to prevent it, but they just can't be bothered. And that's what we're going to see. And you couldn't do that in the Apple world at all. We'll do something like that, but the end result is something you can only put on certain phones that have chosen to sideload it. You can't like send it to your friends and have them all install it, which you totally can with Android. Android Debug Bridge is your main tool. You connect with a USB cable, you turn on USB debugging, and now you get a command line control of your Android system so you can see the logs, run commands to launch intents that send signals to apps and so on. Yeah. Use what? I forget what Termux is.
It's a CLI for Android.
I imagine, yeah, there's a bunch of tools. I'm using the very simple tools. But yeah, and by the way, you can do a real phone or you can run an emulator. And I haven't added the project yet, but now there's a cloud emulator, which is really important because a lot of people can't run local virtual machines with modern computers, especially modern Windows machines, because of high resolution. So if you have trouble running a local virtual machine, you can do it all in the cloud now. And Genymotion is cool. They give you a 1,000 minutes free, but you can sign up with a fake email account and get another 1,000 minutes by just making another account. So you can get all you need. It's bloody awesome. So you can push files to the phone. You can pull files off the phone. You can see the log with Logcat. You'll see which is just the syslog. And Android is basically the same as Ubuntu Linux. And iOS is pretty much the same as BSD Unix. So if you know any Linux or Unix, it's a very familiar environment. The only thing is it's very stripped down. A lot of the tools are not there, but you can put them on there once you get root access. You can install apps, and you can get a shell on the phone and execute arbitrary Unix commands on the Android phone. So you can totally control it. And the amazing thing is that Android apps all come effectively with the source code in them. And it is extremely obvious that the developers of Android software do not know this. If you make Windows software like Microsoft Office, you write it in something like C or C++, you compile it, and then you distribute it with high confidence that no one is going to alter it or analyze it, because the object code that's distributed is not easy to reverse. Now, we do teach reversing here in 127 and such, but it's not easy. You hit this assembly language that's hard to read, all the names of the variables and methods are gone. It's frustrating. Android is not like that. You don't get Java source code, but you get Smalley bytecode, which is almost the same as Java, as you'll see here. So you just take it apart with APK tool. Your Android app is a single file, an APK app, and all you do is unzip it with a tool for that purpose. APK tool is a standard hacking tool we use. There are others. And then you get the Smalley code. So this is the Bank of America, or TD Ameritrade. Here's TD Ameritrade. So there's the app. You see they use some libraries here like Adobe and Xtify. Then TD Ameritrade wrote some custom code in mobile and mobile 3. And down here in the API, look at all these names: cache manager, banking, validate, exception. It's incredibly easy to find things like password, credit card number, encryption. They're just obvious names right there. If this was compiled C code with the symbols removed, you would not have that. It would not be that easy to find things. Here's Bank of America. Bank of America uses a Google product called ProGuard, which is completely useless. It's a free product built in Android Studio, and they tell you that it will protect your app from reverse engineering, which is just a lie. It is exactly as useful as a drunk security guard that locks half the doors and then goes home. And here's what it did. Bank of America used ProGuard. So you see, instead of like the TD Ameritrade, where every possible name is just right there, most of them are now just A, B, C, and D. Sure, except for a few like business credit card details activity. A bunch of them are still, so it did change some of the symbols into meaningless symbols, but it left plenty there. So I've never been slowed down for a minute by any ProGuard obfuscation. It's a total waste of your time. There are better products like -O that cost money that really turn all the symbols into meaningless garbage. And that will slow you down as a reverse engineer. But this is just laughable. So here's the difference between Java and Smalley. So here's Java. Parameters put username, put password. And here's what it looks like in Smalley. This is the actual code on your phone. It's not much harder to read than the original Java. You might as well just give me the source code. And you can take it apart, alter it, recompile it, resign it, and make a modified app with a Trojan in it. You can take Metasploit and put a shell in it and give it to your friends, and they can run Instagram, and now you take over their phone. It's bloody awesome. It's a total playground for hackers. So if you have an Android phone, you should be running antivirus on it, because you can totally make malware to put on the Android, and there's tons of malware in the Google App Store. Their cleaning product does not keep it out at all. Apple is actually quite effective at keeping malware out of the store. That's why most iPhones are not infected. But Android phones have a lot of malware on them. Anyway, although to be fair, they claim only 1% of them actually have what they call official malware on them. But it's in a targeted attack, they're very easy to get into. Anyway, so yeah, so you can monitor the log on your phone. So you can download an app. You're going to do this in the projects. Download an app like the Bank of America app, modify it to make an extra copy of the password or the credit card number, and put it in the log where you can see it. And then you'll see it here. So now the username and password is just put in the log. I wanted to put it up on Pastebin, but making a network connection in Smalley was too hard for me. So I just put it in the log, because that only takes 2 lines of Smalley code. If somebody's cool and you figure out how to make a good network connection in Smalley, you'll get extra credit. Anyway, you can monitor the log with Logcat. And so you can just download any app off the store, take it apart, read it to see how it works, modify it to make it work differently, pack it up, sign it, and put it back on your phone and run it, unless they take measures to prevent that. There are ways to prevent it. For example, the NFL is the most secure Android app I know. I don't know why this is. The Bank of America doesn't care. The government doesn't care. But the NFL cares because the NFL had an app where you could buy like t-shirts and tickets. And some hacker wrote a blog about their security problems. So they actually fixed their problem. So if you download the NFL app, if I take the NFL app and modify it, the very first thing it does is check for the integrity of the app. It checks something like the MD5 hash, and if it's modified, it pops up a screen saying, oh, your app must be updated before you move forward, and you seriously have to update. It won't do anything until you put the real app on there. Now, that's not hard to do, but nobody bothers because they just don't care. Anyway, to be fair, it is probably the case that they're not losing a lot of money through this vector right now. That's why they're not bothering fixing it. But anyway, it is pretty hilarious for us. You get to do a lot of ridiculous things that in a logical world you should not be able to do. So I learned, my first introduction was Dancing with Dominic. I saw this at B-Sides or one of the conferences around here. This guy had a small child and like 2 or 3 years old or 4 years old. She was playing Android games on an Android tablet and they were too hard. And he said, gee, I wonder if I could make that game easier. And he showed how easy it is. Just take it apart, find like how fast the bad guys are doing, slow them down, give you more lives. It's really, I said, boy, that's awesome. I wonder if you could do that to the Bank of America. That's what I said. And because I used to work in the financial industry, that's where I naturally go. I said, I wonder. And in fact, you can just do it. It's ridiculously easy. So you take the Bank of America app, you install it through Google Play. Then you just go with ADB and you can list your packages. Then you can find a path to it and then you can just pull it down. The entire app is this one file, com.infonaut.bofa.apk. Then you unpack it with APK tool. Now you can look inside here and find good stuff like the business credit card details. Then you go inside there and you find here MDA verification details on the right here. You find these, let me make this smaller so I can use my mouse to point around. I want this big and I want it bigger like this. There we go. We're getting there. Now I want this bigger. All right. So here you see MDA verification details, business credit card details. Here's set card number. So you can kind of tell what's going on. So apparently these are the registers. Everything in Smalley, there are 16 registers, V0, V1, V2. First, at the start of the method, you tell how many registers you're using of the 16 that are available. The original app was only using 3. So I just changed that to 5. So now they start at 0. So now V3 and V4 are available for me to use, and I won't break the app by using them because the original app did not use them in this method. So I go down here, and in V3 I put a label, B of A Trojan, and then I put that in V3, and down here I take this thing, which is the credit card number, and I put that in V3 and put it here. It was in V0. This put it in V0. So now when I run the modified app, I just repack it with this and then sign it with my own signature, and then put it back on the phone. And now when you log in with your credit card number, it puts it and the other number right there in the log where anybody can see it. So it's very easy to make modified code. This is a proof of concept. All right, then they did it to Bancorp. The Bancorp, I couldn't find it in one variable. I could only find a place where it read that one letter at a time. So I had to run like a keylogger that builds it step by step. So you see the user ID being built here and the password being built there. I found like 4 different categories of these things. Here's Capital One. Capital One, they use like key code characters, which look like ASCII, but there's a different translation. But anyway, this spells out the password. You get them one by one. Here's SunTrust. SunTrust had stuff encrypted, and I put it here. I was able to put out the encryption, the HTTP parameters. These are the parameters being sent up to the lab. And so then there was Trade King. There was a verifier that detected the Trojan when I did this one. It's a stockbroking app. So anyway, Droid Dream was one of the first big malware families in the Google Play Store. They've had a ton of people that infect things in the Play Store. It's never slowed down much. Many people get infected just by loading straight things from Play Store. I got the very first Android phone, which was hilarious. At that time, you could just send text messages and everyone would just execute as root in the command line. It was bloody awesome. And the first thing I did was open the Play Store and download the #1 thing, and it was malware. It was like popping up ads that said, this is awesome, malware on my phone. This is gonna be so much fun. And it has been so much fun. Anyway, so Google has the application verification service, just like Microsoft's antivirus. At least until recently, it is hilariously useless. There's some kind of fundamental rule that whoever writes the OS cannot secure it. So there's the app verification service. Here's how good they are. And this is Google's detection, how likely they are to detect the malware, and that's every other AV in the world being 10 times better. In fact, at DEF CON, when this was, they used to have a thing called Bouncer, which was a virtual Android phone. You submit your app, it runs it on the phone to see if it's malicious. And so I think Charlie Miller, some of the big Android hackers, they figured this out. So they wrote an app which took over Bouncer on the Google server and got a shell on there, and they went and tested Google systems from it. So they managed to take over this AV and take over the Google systems through their supposed antivirus process. So it is hilariously awful and ineffective. And that's why there's tons of malware in the Google Play Store. They are not effective at getting rid of it. Apple is effective, but Google is not. So you can reverse engineer any binary in principle, but if you actually obfuscate the code with a strong obfuscator, it becomes less easy. You don't just search for a word like credit card or password and find it right there. You'll have to find a bunch of meaningless numbers and find it in there. -O, here's what -O does. -O is not messing around. If you obfuscate this thing with -O, it changes the strings to stuff like that instead of like password or credit card. So that's annoying. Now you can't read the names of anything, and you can still do it. I did this. You can write a Python script that will just take every single variable everywhere and put it in the log. So your app will run slow and the log will scream by, and then you can hunt through there for where your password went. You can still find it eventually, but it definitely raises the bar. It makes it a lot less fun to hack your app. So I just go on and hack the next app. It's like those clubs you put on your car. My friends say, dude, I could just take that off. And I say, yeah, but the next car doesn't have one. But I have another form of endpoint security on my car. Anyway, so here's the main point. OWASP, this great group, they organize these things. So here's the OWASP Mobile Top 10. The #1 vulnerability on the phone is not on the phone, it's on the server. If you think what's going on the phone is horrible, wait till you see what the APIs are like, what they're actually doing when they go to the server. They will make you cry. And we'll be doing those in the project. So I think 642, I think I'm going to show you an example here. I'm not going to do it live tonight. You will be doing it in homework, but there's one I've been doing all over the world. This one was so bad, I was sort of reluctant to do it publicly, but I totally told these guys and they just don't care. So they became homework. I did it at Black Hat, I did it at DEF CON China, and you're going to do it for homework here. And that is where is Equity Pandit. This is the most awesome app in the world. These guys they advertise themselves as like one of the top financial companies in India. They're actually compliant according to some ISO compliance formula, which is not a security compliance. But anyway, there's some kind of investment app which has a lot of users in India apparently, and you don't see this every day. That's why it's in your homework. What these guys do, you install this app, and then you can try logging in, and you will find that it's totally sending your data over the internet with no encryption at all. It's sending your name and password right up with plain old HTTP, which is pretty ridiculous, but that's just the beginning of it. So then I started learning more reverse engineering. So I thought I was going to make a copy of this app, connect it to my server, and make an API that could demonstrate some interesting vulnerabilities. But in order to do that, I started looking at how their API works. And my jaw hit the floor. It's impressive. The way this thing works is when you try to log in, normally if you log into a website, you type in your name and password, it sends the password up to the server, and the server decides whether it's good or not. And if it's good, it says, thank you, you're logged in. And if it's bad, it says you're not logged in, you have to try again. What this thing does is you type in your email address, it sends the email address to the server, then it sends the correct password down to the phone, and then it takes the phone you type in and compares it on the phone. And it does that, sending it over plain text, and it puts both the good right password and the wrong password in the log. Oh, the user typed this password, but they should have typed that, so they're rejected. It's just right there. So this means you can get in anybody else's account at any time. You just send up their email address and it will tell you their password. And people are putting money in this thing. And I told them and they don't even care. And I'm like, so you have various projects here, and at the end, you just have to get my password. Here's my account. I made an account called topsecret@mailinator.com. The flag is my password. You have to steal my password from the phone. So I was teaching this class in Saudi Arabia, and I had to hit this project, and they said, oh my God, you're telling us to hack the server. That would be illegal. I said, you don't have to hack the server. You just have to ask politely, and it will just tell you my password. It's mind-blowing. Now, there's another one. I wonder if I still got it here, which I thought I mentioned, University of Houston. But one this is the one. Okay, here's another fun one. And okay, so I do a lot of colleges. I do a lot of audits of college apps just because I'm in the industry, and when I began, I had this laughable concept that they might pay attention to my vulnerability reports more than other people, which is absolutely not true. But anyway, I started with colleges. So the University of Houston had this alumni app. And it's real pretty because I don't know if you know a lot about colleges, but here's how colleges work. The number one most important activity at colleges is football. That is by far, the whole college is funded by football. And the reason it's funded by football is because the students who graduated and now are rich donate money to the college. And the only reason they do it is because of football. Football is the only reason they remember what college they went from. They wear the jerseys, they come, they send their kids, they keep the trophies. Football is what keeps the memory alive. It's the most important activity at the college. It pays for everything. And it pays for it through the alumni donating because of the football. So the alumni, as you may have noticed, students are completely no importance at all. Treat them like dirt. Professors are easily replaceable. Administrators come and go like flies. But the alumni are what holds the college up. So they gave them a special app. So they had this thing. You type in the first few letters of your name, and it searches, and it just shows you everybody with that name. Now, I thought, that's a little rude. Here I am seeing some information about people without having to log in first, but I guess this isn't super personal. This is, maybe there's a published directory of alumni and these guys are in it. That might be all right. So then I connected it to go through Burp, which we're going to do. Burp is a man-in-the-middle tool, a proxy, so you can watch the traffic go by. And when I did, here's when it posts, and I said, well, here it is. I'm sending up data as I'm searching for it. Now, here's the first flaw, which, by the way, is fatal, although many people wouldn't get it. This is the actual request that looked for my last name. And what happened here is it did not, what it should have sent is the A I typed in one field, and the A I typed in the other field should have gone up to the server. That is not what went to the server. What went to the server was this stuff, substring of, Houston name, first name, and substring last name. That is active code, which came from the app. I could just change this to any executable command and it will run on the server. This is command injection. Your app does not send commands to the server to be executed on the server. That's insane. Your app sends data to the server, which is then run by commands that the developer put on the server. You don't have the ability to send commands to the server unless you're nuts. So this is, in fact, the kiss of death. But it's not even worth talking about compared to what happened later. Notice what happened. I sent up that request for people whose names started with A. My request was pretty small. My request was 426 bytes or something. My response was 351 kilobytes. Now, how can it take 351 kilobytes to show me that list of names and addresses? That's not what it is. Here's the data. When you send any query to the server, it sends the entire database onto your phone. Every user, their credit card number, their password, their address, the entire database goes on your phone. And when I revealed this to classes, students told me they've in fact been taught to do this because they want the app to be responsive in case you have a slow network connection. So it's a lot, once you put the whole database on the phone, then everything goes locally, then it runs faster. And I said, well, I bet it does. But you know, in my opinion, there's a problem here. And so then, when I've done this before, I've gotten in plenty of trouble reporting things. So when I found this, I said, well, now what? I could contact like the main contact number or email of the college or the compliance staff for HIPAA. I've tried that before. Then I'll hit a lawyer and lawyers will just blame me and prosecute me and everything. So what can I do? I said, I know what to happen. They were running CCDC competition. I mentioned the competition before. They're bloody awesome. One of the awesome things about competitions, several times when I used to be the coach of the team, I would sit around and I would often test their website and I'd find vulnerabilities in that college that we were playing against. And I found the cool thing is to tell the competition team about it because they will just fix it with no nonsense. Because if you're in the business, you understand everybody. It's like telling somebody your fly's unzipped. You just fix it. You don't have to like punch somebody in the face or start a lawsuit or something. You made a mistake, you fix it, no drama, no nonsense. So I asked if somebody knew anybody on the competition team, and it turned out the guy that started the cyber defense competition is a professor at this college. So I went to him, I said, I have a security problem at the college. Can I tell you? And he said, well, I'm not the official contact, but I guess you could go through me if you want. And I said, I want. So I told him, and there was no lawsuits or anything. Like 2 days later, the app was gone. And they put up a note saying, we're writing a new app to give you a better experience. And I said, I hope so. So they did. And you know, no huge scandal, no disaster, no nonsense. It's very nice. That's what you do. You find cyber competition people because they know what's going on. If you deal with normals, they will freak out. Anyway, so those are a couple examples of the kind of ridiculous stuff you'll see in these things. And so you should learn to do audits. You could also use Bowne scanners. There's a couple of them. The Sandra Bugs is pretty good. You can just run a Bowne scanner on the app and it will find like these obvious mistakes in an automated fashion. If I was at a company developing apps, I would just say everything has to pass this scanner before we ship it to the customer. That would make it 10 times better if people would just do that. Then we're going to use Drozer. where we actually look at the internal operation of the Android operating system. There are 4 things on there, and there are methods, intent displays. There's various 4 categories of things and databases. You can see each one and watch the components talk to each other. It sounds like fun, but I haven't found any exciting vulnerabilities at that level, but it is nice to get to that level of the operating system. And then we'll do iPhones. I got only the first 3 iPhone projects here. We're going to have a lot more because iPhones are bloody awesome. And I even have a nice thing called Damn Vulnerable iOS app, and we could use it, but I got distracted because I was going through I already did like 350 iPhone apps over Christmas break, and I've done like another 400 since then. And I found a bank that broke TLS, and they wrote their own custom encryption instead, which is the kiss of death. By the way, if you ever decide to write custom encryption, just beat your head against the wall until the feeling goes away. Don't write your own encryption routine. This never works. There's a reason why the smartest people on earth tried real hard and made the standard stuff like AES and TLS, and you want to just slavishly obey them and use that. Whatever you make up that you think is better, you are wrong. Anyway, so these guys, I'm sure they're wrong because they're using some stupid encryption. They've hidden the key on the phone, and I haven't quite got it yet, but I'm hoping by next week I will hack that, and that'll become homework after they don't fix it. They might actually fix it, but there's a 90% chance that they will just ignore my report and not fix it, and then they become homework. Anyway, so, all right, are there any questions about anything? I think that's probably enough of general introduction to where we're going. So what you should do is get the book and start reading it. It's a very good book. It's a little hard to read, but a lot of good information. And start taking the quizzes. Go sign up here, and you'll find quizzes, and start doing projects. Your first couple of projects are, of course, to get some of this stuff going. You want to get an Android emulator going is what I recommend, although you could use a real Android device if you have one, which is fine. And I will, by next week, have the cloud project up so you can use a cloud-based emulator so you do not have to have any ability to run virtual machines locally in case you cannot run VMware locally. But it's I'll just point out, this thing is awesome. If your machine is capable of running VirtualBox, which is older PCs and some new PCs and Macs, then this is VirtualBox. VirtualBox is open source, so many people take VirtualBox and modify it, and that's what these guys have done. So I think the Nexus 4 works. Let's see. I don't want to update. There we are. So you just install these versions up. Anybody? I can't start that one because it's connected to my Kali machine. That's all right. I just have to run this too. And now that should launch now, if I can get it to stop messing around with me. Let's try another one. There we are. I just wanted to get one so you can see it. And it looks like I have a bunch of them, and I keep filling them up with stuff and crashing them and not cleaning them up because I'm a slob. But anyway, this is the fun way to do Android. You have a virtual phone running Android. You can install apps on it. You can totally connect to it and hack it. It's very nice. You can't do this with iPhone just because Apple is a jerk. There is a company that makes a product that does this for Apple phones, and Apple keeps suing them and putting them out of business. They don't like it. Google doesn't care, which is pretty nice. So you can totally have a phone and swipe up to unlock. Yes, there we are. Come on, stop messing with me. Thank you. Hey, there's probably, I think there's some other thing you can click somewhere to do it. This maybe? This? There's some other way to do it, but I can only do it this way. What is it? Well, I think lock. This one, that's power. 1, 2 up. Oh, good, thank you. Now I can log in with my top secret password. All right, and wait a minute, it's moving so slowly. Fine, 1, 2. I don't know why it's so slow, but life is tough. Am I what?
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah, well, I might be down to such advanced measures any minute here. It is ridiculously slow for no apparently good reason. Let's see if it's going to let me in or what. Maybe this phone is totally full or something. Oh boy, so there's my glorious phone. Anyway, so you just have a phone here, you can run apps and browser, you can catch the traffic. So you can totally do everything for free on a simulated Android. For iPhones, you're going to have to use real iPhones and real Macs. We have some Macs in the lab you can use, and I'm going to get a bunch of iPhones. I found I can get iPhones that work for like 25 bucks. I think like 5 S's or something. So anyway, now you can run apps on the phone and totally practice hacking them. If you want to do Android malware research, which we are not focusing on in this class, you have to get a real tablet, because the malware for Android knows when you're running an emulator it won't run. So when we took malware analysis classes at cons, you have to bring a real tablet. You can get a real Android tablet for like 40 bucks if you get an older one. Anyway, so if you want to get your own iPhone to work on, I wouldn't use the one you put real data on. Get another one to work on for this. And if you do, then get one of these compatible with the checkra jailbreak. The checkra jailbreak is the new one, which is bloody awesome. It's checkra.in. That's it. And you want to get a phone in this range, 5S to X, iOS 12.3 and up. And I find you can get those in town for 25 bucks at some store that sells used iPhones. I'm going to go there and get a basket of them. So I'm putting it later in the class, but it's really fun to hack iPhones. But you might as well start with Android if you haven't done it, because it's all very much the same. And that Android emulator is free and such. And as I say, I'll have a cloud version up by next week, so you can do it even if your machine will not run Genymotion, which is true of some modern Windows machines. When Microsoft moved to like 4 kilopixels, a lot of virtualization products stopped working. And a lot of students find it very difficult to run local virtual machines. So I'm trying to put everything in the cloud as much as possible. And you really won't need to run much in the way of local virtual machines here. You can use Genymotion Cloud for Android, and you can use a real iPhone for iPhone. So you have a couple of cases where you'd like to have a Kali machine or a Linux machine on the network, but there's ways around that too. So anyway, so you should start doing the projects. For most of you, you'll be able to do these projects as they're written. You'll be able, if you have a Mac, you can do it this way, Genymotion and Burp. If you have Windows, you can't run Genymotion, you have to run BlueStacks, which is a Windows-based Android emulator. It looks just the same. It's actually very nice and luxurious because it's intended so you can play Android games on your Windows machine. And then Nox is another, those are emulators you use on Windows. So a couple of years ago when I taught this class, I didn't support Windows at all. I said you have to have a Mac. But then I found some better emulators, so you can actually do this stuff on a PC. It's more painful. It's easier on a Linux or Mac, but you can do it on a PC. You'll just have to use 2 different emulators, because each of them only do about half of what you need. And in a couple of cases, you actually need 2 PCs, because because the PCs hog up the network card, and there's no way to make them network correctly with the virtual machines. But anyway, we will have a lab you can use. We'll have, in a week or 2, we'll have open lab hours available for that. I'm probably going to have to open the 214 lab again this semester by the time we get to iOS. Anyway, any questions about anything? Well, I guess that's enough for tonight. I'm going to stop the recording. I'll stick around and answer any questions anybody might have. And I'll leave the online streaming going. So your online